Sometime before dawn cracked open the valley, Maya stepped into the old barn and felt the air shift as if the building itself recognized her return. Dust spiraled up in slow motion, drifting through the cold glow of her flashlight like tiny memories waking after years of sleep. Outside, the world was quiet, but inside, the silence pressed against her skin like a second shadow. She had spent the earlier hours in a polished room where her stepmother smirked behind red lipstick, and her stepbrothers laughed openly when the will revealed they'd inherited mansions, cars, and vineyards, while she received only this barn, the place they mocked as worthless. But the moment she crossed the threshold, she felt it, a whisper of her father's presence woven into the scent of hay, iron, and old wood. Her boots brushed against scattered straw, carrying her deeper until she stopped beneath the beam carved with RT plus MT, her father's initials beside her own, etched when she was 9 and believed the world was simple. Something tugged at her attention near the floorboards, a subtle misalignment she couldn't ignore. She knelt, brushing away dirt that clung to the wood like stubborn secrets. The board shifted beneath her fingers with a small groan, revealing darkness beneath. She hesitated for only a breath before lifting it, the musty scent of concealed earth curling upward. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, rested a brass key and a folded note bearing her father's handwriting, steady, bold, unmistakably his. Where the earth meets its mirror, truth waits for its keeper. The words didn't just intrigue her. They reached into the hollow ache inside her chest and set something alight. She closed her hand around the key, a warmth blooming in her palm, and rose slowly as the barn settled around her like an ancient witness awakening to her presence. Maya stood in the doorway of the barn as mist crawled low across the field, wrapping the land in a silver hush that made the world feel suspended. She reread the note under the dim glow of her flashlight, each letter pulling her deeper into the weight of what her father had hidden. The key felt heavier now, as if carrying years of intention inside its brass grooves. Footsteps crunched across the gravel outside, and Maya instinctively backed into the shadows. Through a narrow crack between the boards, she saw a white SUV roll to a stop. Her stepmother stepped out, flawless in pressed slacks and sunglasses despite the gray morning. One of her stepbrothers emerged behind her, shoulders cocky, smirk ingrained. They didn't approach the barn, only surveyed it from a distance with the cold indifference of people convinced of their superiority. "She can keep this dump," her brother muttered, kicking a clump of mud. Her stepmother's voice floated through the air, smooth and venomous as she dismissed the idea that Richard had left Maya anything of value. Their silhouettes lingered in the mist like vultures perched above a carcass, feeding on arrogance. When they finally drove away, the quiet that followed wasn't peaceful, it was charged, humming with a new understanding. Maya exhaled slowly, her humiliation from the will reading burning off like morning fog. What they saw as scraps, her father had turned into a fortress. And now she held the first key, literally, to unraveling everything he'd planned. She tucked the note into her jacket, scanned the barn again with sharpened focus, and felt the gravity of a secret stretching beneath her feet. The land, the air, the silence, everything leaned toward her as if urging her to keep going. The valley fell into deep night by the time Maya returned, the barn a dark, looming silhouette against the moonlit sky. She carried her father's jacket on her shoulders, the familiar scent grounding her. The phrase from the note, "where the earth meets its mirror," looped in her mind like a quiet drumbeat guiding her steps. Inside the barn, the cold felt sharper, her breath fogging softly as she swept her flashlight across the floor. That's when she saw it, a thin, unnatural crack in the concrete beneath stacked crates. She pushed them aside, her boots scraping loudly in the hollow stillness, and ran her hand along the seam. The concrete shifted. Her pulse spiked as she pressed harder, revealing a trapdoor disguised beneath years of dust. When she lifted it, a stale breath of air rose from below, cold, metallic, and ancient. Wooden steps spiraled into darkness. She descended slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight, the narrow walls brushing her sleeves. At the bottom, her flashlight revealed a small chamber lined with shelves. Metal boxes filled the room, labeled in her father's handwriting, harvest logs, business records, sealed documents. But one box bore only a single word: Maya. Her throat tightened as she opened it, revealing folders tied with twine, maps, letters, legal papers, unsuspecting pieces of a truth her father had buried for her sake. She pressed play on the small recorder inside. Her father's voice, softened by static yet unmistakably his, filled the chamber. If you're hearing this, I couldn't tell you in time. Everything is under your name. They would have stolen it. The barn will show you what matters. Tears blurred her vision as his voice faded. She swallowed, gathered the box to her chest, and began climbing back toward the dim glow of dawn. Morning sunlight filtered through the farmhouse windows as Maya spread the documents across the kitchen table. Legal seals glinted, signatures arched with certainty, her name repeated across papers she never knew existed. She felt the quiet strength of her father's plan settle like armor around her. Her phone buzzed, a message from her stepmother dripping with contempt, demanding she attend a meeting with estate lawyers. Maya didn't reply. At 10 a.m., she walked into a conference room shimmering with polished oak and artificial confidence. Her stepmother sat centered, flanked by her sons and attorneys whose expressions hovered between boredom and superiority. The lead lawyer began speaking until Maya opened her folder. The rustle of papers sliced through the room like a blade. One by one, she placed documents on the table: incorporation certificates, transfer deeds, notarized confirmations establishing her as majority shareholder of Thompson Holdings, the very company that legally owned everything her stepmother believed she still controlled. The room stilled. Lawyers leaned forward, eyes narrowing as they scanned dates and seals that undercut every assumption in the room. Her stepmother paled. Her brothers scoffed in disbelief. A registrar was called. The confirmation returned swiftly. Maya Thompson owns controlling interest. Panic rippled through the room like a current hitting metal. Her stepmother tried to twist the narrative, but Maya, steady, calm, met her gaze and said, "You inherited titles, not control." The words fell with the weight of truth long overdue. She gathered her documents, ignoring the frantic whispers swirling behind her, and stepped out into the hall. The lawyer who had read her father's will approached quietly. "Your father would be proud," he whispered. For the first time since his death, she felt the truth of those words settle deep in her chest. By afternoon, news spread like wildfire. Farmer's hidden vault reveals rightful heir. Headlines echoed across local channels, each one peeling away another layer of deception her stepmother had built over the years. Appeals were filed, but the evidence resting in Maya's possession, legally sealed, time-stamped, irrefutable, held firm. The courts upheld her ownership, shifting power with a finality that rippled through the valley. Maya returned to the barn, not out of obligation, but reverence. Sunlight streamed through the cracks, painting warm streaks across the initials carved into the wooden beam. She touched the grooves, remembering her father's laugh, the way he'd lift her toward the rafters and tell her the world was bigger than any cruelty she might face. Standing in that place now, the barn no longer felt like an old structure clinging to time. It felt alive, holding every whisper of intention her father had hidden beneath its floor. She closed her eyes, inhaling the scent of hay and old wood that had once clung to his shirts after long days in the field. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but this time it didn't carry the heaviness of storms. It sounded almost like applause echoing across the valley. She stepped to the doorway and watched the horizon shift under the weight of evening light. This land, mocked, dismissed, underestimated, was now her foundation, a place built on her father's belief in her. As wind swept through the barn, rustling the hay in soft waves, she felt something settle inside her. Not victory, not revenge, something deeper. She whispered, "You didn't leave me nothing. You left me everything." And the barn, warm in the afternoon quiet, felt like it agreed. In the weeks that followed, spring painted the valley with new life. Grass brightened, wildflowers pushed up through softening soil, and the farmhouse no longer felt like a monument to someone else's power. Each morning, Maya crossed the field to the barn, restoring it beam by beam. She painted the doors, scrubbed the windows, cleared out rusted tools, and patched the roof where storms had chewed holes. Birds nested in the rafters, their small chirps weaving sound into spaces that once held only silence. Every repair felt like stitching her father's legacy back into the land. One afternoon, the crunch of gravel drew her from her work. Her stepbrothers approached slowly, no suits, no arrogance, only hesitant uncertainty. The older one carried a small box. Inside lay their father's pocket watch, cleaned and polished. "Mom said he lost it," the younger murmured. "But I think he just didn't trust her with it." Maya lifted the watch, feeling its weight, steady, familiar as if it carried her father's heartbeat. No apologies were spoken, yet something unspoken passed between them, understanding carved from truth. They left quietly, allowing the moment to settle gently behind them. Maya sat on the barn steps as the sun dipped low, holding the watch up to the orange glow. Its ticking blended with the distant hum of wind rustling through early spring leaves. She felt her father's presence, not as memory, but as a steady warmth radiating through every corner of the land he had protected in secret. For the first time in years, the ache in her chest eased. She whispered, "Time tells everything," and the watch ticked on, steady and sure. Night wrapped around the valley like a soft blanket as Maya organized the underground documents on the barn floor. Lantern light flickered across company ledgers, maps of land divisions, handwritten letters her father had penned late at night when worry kept him awake. She traced the lines of his handwriting, imagining him sitting alone at the kitchen table, planning every step to protect her from a family driven by greed. She played the recording again, not because she needed the information, but because hearing his voice made the barn feel warm. Each word carried memory. The evenings he taught her to plant seeds in perfect rows, the mornings he let her ride on the tractor, the way he ruffled her hair when she outgrew fear of storms. "You were always the one with heart," he'd said in the recording. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling those words settle deep like a seed ready to bloom. Outside, moonlight stretched across the field like a silver path. She walked to the barn door, letting the cool air brush against her skin. The valley lay still, yet alive with quiet promises. She felt taller, steadier, as if every truth she had uncovered cemented her place not just as the heir her father intended, but as the woman capable of carrying the weight of everything he built. She looked at the rolling hills and imagined him standing beside her, nodding quietly in approval. The night didn't feel dark anymore. It felt like a doorway. Sunrise found Maya standing in front of the barn, her father's pocket watch ticking softly in her hand. The valley glowed gold, lighting the farmhouse, the fields, and the barn that had once sheltered secrets but now held her truth. The company was hers. The land was hers. The legacy was hers not because of documents or rulings, but because her father had trusted her with a depth of love no one else had earned. She closed the barn doors gently, not to hide what had been discovered, but to honor the journey that had brought her here. The wind drifted through the grass, carrying a whisper of memory that made her smile. She walked toward the farmhouse feeling lighter, stronger, ready to step into everything ahead. And as she reached the top of the hill and looked back one last time, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad, for seeing me even when they didn't." If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that truth always rises no matter how deeply it's buried, I'd love for you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more powerful stories that honor resilience and real strength. Before you go, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you're hearing this right now?